here's kind of a final example of what your project might look like. Couple things that you're going to be focusing on for this project. You're going to be creating a landscape using gradients. So we just learned that gradient tool, and you can see all of the different gradients that are in here. The other thing that your project has to have is you need to use a foreground, which is the things that's in the front. So like this tall cactus here. The middle ground, so things that are in the middle, in the background. Okay, so these mountains would be an example of that. So notice as we're going, things are getting smaller except for these mountains. I mean, in comparison, these mountains are smaller to a cactus, but in real life, mountains are obviously huge. But things should look as if they're going further back in space. Okay, so to get started, pick a landscape. So I have a couple of different images up here. I just did a quick search of landscapes. And like if we click on this one here, the palm trees are an example of the foreground. The water would be the middle ground, and then the sky is the background. So you can certainly look at these to kind of help get you inspired a little bit as far as what you want to make, because you certainly shouldn't copy my idea. You should come up with your own idea. Here's kind of another way to kind of see this in kind of the same way that we're going to be doing it. This is a pretty good example of things in the foreground, and then you can see the middle ground here, and then the background as you get further back, okay? So there's lots of different things that you guys can explore with this, so get creative. But I'm just going to go ahead and show you an example like this one here, just to go over a few tools. So in Photoshop, I have already opened up a new file. Remember, file new. And I went ahead and named this gradient landscape, okay? So the first thing that we are going to do is, if your layer is not transparent, that's okay, but let's make sure this layer is unlocked. So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to just divide this background so that we have a ground and like the sky. So to do this, I am just going to be not using, I'm going to be using a new tool today that's called the marquee tool. So if you click this, it's a rectangle. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to drag across like this. Okay. So now I have this moving dotted line. So what this moving dotted line is telling me is that only this area here is selected. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my gradient here. And I'm just going to pick this one. I'm going to go ahead and drop it in this way. Okay, so now notice it, even though I'm on the one layer, it's only filling in this bottom part here. If I went like this over here, notice that nothing happened on this part. It only happened on the bottom here, okay? So play around with the direction of what you want to do. If you don't like the way that things are, the direction, as far as like the blue, the red, the yellow, try it in a different direction, okay? Try a different shape. Lots of different things can happen, okay? But try to use it so it makes sense, okay? So I'm going to go ahead then, and because I want this all to be on one layer for the background, I'm going to go ahead and on my keyboard do Command D, deselect, and I'm going to take that marquee tool again and select the top half here, okay? So then I'm going to pick a different color gradient. Maybe I want one for the sky. Remember, if you want to add more choices, you press the gear and then just click one of these. So if I go to spectrums, that's going to give me like rainbow colors. Press append. Don't press OK. Press append, and that adds more, and you can keep doing that, okay? Just by going in here. We could add more and more and more, okay? So maybe this is the one I want for my sky. Okay, so I'm just going to drop that in right there. Ooh, I might kind of do, there we go, kind of something like that, okay? So I definitely want this to be different than here. And you probably want to do colors that make sense a little bit, but that's going to be up to you, okay? So I have this to begin with, so I'm going to go ahead and add a new layer. And if you want to hide this, it's up to you, but I'm going to keep mine up for now. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start by making some mountain ranges like I did in the example that I showed you guys. Okay, so I'm just going to do that right along the horizon line here. So as I go to do that, I'm going to use a new tool this time. And right now, this is called the Lasso tool. It looks like a cowboy lasso, okay? If you go right click on here or just hold down, we are going to use the Polygonal Lasso tool, okay? So that's going to make polygon shapes. So I'm going to go ahead and just start by clicking, and you can see the line here. Okay, I'm not holding down. I'm just going to go ahead and go across like this all the way. Now I'm just going to kind of make these little mountain shapes. Each time I want a kind of a new line, I need to actually click down. Okay, so I'm going to make just kind of some interesting shapes. Some big, some small. Just kind of like this. Okay, so now I need to make sure as I go to finish this mountain that I connect it down here. And notice I was able to connect there when, notice the little lasso tool, when it's connected, there's that little circle. Then click, and then we get those moving ant lines again, okay? So now I'm going to go in, and this area here is selected, even though there's nothing there. I'm going to go ahead and drop in another gradient. Now remember, if you want to create your own colors of gradients rather than picking through here, just double click. And then you can actually just click the color that you want. And then, just go in here and you can select a different color, okay? Depending on what you want for that. And so you can do some pretty cool things with that. If you want something to delete, you just press delete. Down here, if that's kind of the color you want, just kind of play around with it, okay? It's a little confusing at first, but you can do a lot of different cool things with this, okay? So I'm going to make this a little bit darker. Okay, so I'm going to press OK, and you can name this like, oh, green, because I'm boring, okay? Anyway, you can press OK, and then that will save, but then it's up here, and so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drop this gradient into my mountains. And now it's filling in that way, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to repeat that process with making another mountain range, but notice it's going to be just a little bit different. So I'm going to do Command D to deselect, start a new layer, and then I am going to create another mountain range, but this time I'm going to make them a little bit bigger. And remember, if you don't like the size of this one here, I can click that layer and do Command T. And then you can actually make things smaller if you need to, okay? So that might be a tool you use later on. So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to repeat that same thing. Okay, now I know these mountains aren't the coolest or the best, but you kind of get the process a little bit, okay? So then you can also, with this marquee tool, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start a new layer. This marquee tool is you can actually change shapes of it, okay? So like, let's say you wanted a circle. So like here, I kind of have like a moon shape. You could totally do something like that, and that can be pretty cool. So you just drag, okay? And then if you guys don't like, so if you notice with this tool, once you click, you can press Command, you can't press Command T to transform anything because there's nothing there. So if you go to, I gotta remember this, I believe it's select, transform selection, it will then actually let you change this, okay, beforehand. So that could be a tool you use too. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick a different gradient to drop in. So this entire project should be made up of gradients, okay? So that might look okay. This one could be a good one to try the round on. Oh, not that one. Maybe that a little bit to make it look a little bit more realistic. Or maybe I want to just kind of use a simple color, kind of like this here, to get more of a realistic type look. So you can kind of play around with that. The more you drag across, the more balance of color you're going to get. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and leave this, do Command D, and then you can move that shape after. Okay. So now you need to add things to the background. Now you can choose to do this in a couple of different ways. You can draw things, okay? Or you can actually find another image, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer here, and this is going to be my cactus layer. I should be layering all of these, but I'm trying to get through these quickly. So the first thing I could do is I could simply just go to my brush tool, and I'm going to use this black, and I'm just going to create a cactus, okay? Very, very quickly. So, oops, my opacity is too low. Okay. So I could start here if I want kind of this tall cactus here at the inside. You see how I got those little ridges there? That's because it's not smoothing out the edges, okay? So you could just actually take this and draw in a cactus, okay? Well, you guys probably aren't going to be using a cactus, but you could go in and just use your brush tool to draw what you want, okay? It's a super easy way to do that. You can make these as detailed as you want to. I'm just kind of making these very, very, very quickly so you guys get this, okay? Now what I would really do then is I'd probably go in, make some small little spikes, okay, just to make it look a little bit more realistic, okay? I'm not going to finish this all right now, but you get the idea, okay? So you could take this shape and simply duplicate it to repeat it. So remember, to duplicate, you right-click and go to Duplicate Layer, and then just go ahead and I would name it like Cactus 2, I guess, okay? So then go up here to the Move tool, and then you can move it, okay? So now you have two shapes. You can do Command T, resize it, and put it so it's further back in space a little bit, okay? You could also do that same thing and go, make sure the layer you're on, go Edit, Transform, and then you could flip it. So you could flip it horizontally so it's the same, but it looks a little bit different, okay? So that's another way that you can do that, okay? So I would kind of stick with just drawing some simple things in front for this first project here. Then you could go in, and as far as all of the little details that you want, you're welcome to kind of add whatever you would like for that, okay? Now, one thing so I can add little pieces of grass. Now, if you notice here, these lines don't really look like grass. So, one thing that I'm going to kind of show you is you can actually change your brushes. And I know you guys have already looked at this, but if you click this here, these are going to be the different kinds of brushes that you guys are going to get. And yours might look a little bit different than this, okay? But it has different categories. So here, once again, you can add brushes in. You can even download brushes, okay? But in your brushes, it's going to have different types of them, okay? So I could go here and maybe I want this brush here. So I'm going to select this brush, and it's going to look a little bit different, okay? Doesn't just look like, that one does kind of look like the normal brush. Let me pick a better one. Um, let's try this one. So this one's going to be a lot different, okay? So depending on the brush that you want, it can kind of play up to the effect that you're going for. But other than that, you are welcome to explore those. If not, you don't have to. But just kind of add some cool things to it, okay? So we'll talk more about brushes later on. But pretty much this is what you're going to be doing, except a lot more details. You could add details of things in the stars or things in the sky and things like that, okay? So you need to make sure that you have a foreground, so things in the front, and then things going in the back. And I will talk about specific requirements for you guys in Google Classroom.